Sunday, September 11th, 2016 marks the first full day of NFL football. Kickoff's at 1, and you will be able to watch football all Sunday afternoon, probably well into midnight. Almost 12 full hours of NFL football. A lot of us are excited about that because football is back. For those of us here in North Carolina, this past Thursday night it was a tough loss to the Panthers versus the Broncos. If you're semi-sports fan, you probably know the big discussions about concussion protocols and hits to the head and things like that. I will refrain from going any further because I will just about be ready to kick into sports radio mode, and that would not be good. But actually, we know the only really NFL game that's going to matter happens on the 12th with the Monday night kickoff, as the Redskins will take the field to beat up on the Steelers. Don't know if you watched games yesterday, but wild and crazy, from a Cowboy not making it out of bounds and the clock running out to a last-second missed field goal by the kicker of the Arizona Cardinals. Or maybe you're a big college fan, and what seemed like to be maybe a little bit of a letdown weekend after the great kickoff weekend we had. But yet there were some big wins for some Carolina teams. East Carolina came through and gave a tough loss to NC State. Wake Forest won a game. Surprise, surprise. Who knew that Wake was capable of that? But they did beat Duke. UNC won. As UNC-A&T won, and Charlotte won. But like I said, that was some tough losses for NC State and for Duke and for Elon. But then there was the wild ending in Oklahoma State Central Michigan game with the pass going out of bounds, an extra play that shouldn't have been being awarded to Central Michigan, and a Hail Mary and a flip pass and a running into the end zone. Wild and crazy stuff. Arkansas going into TCU and beating them in overtime. Could go on and on about the great football games. They were awesome. But in all of football, no matter where it is, Pop Warner, where it is middle school, high school, college, NFL, the play that will get us all to our feet and get us all fired up happens when it's third down and we run the play. And it seems oh so close, but it is 4th and 1. We almost made it. On third down, the defense holds us, and the offense is just short. The refs bring out the chain gang. All the fans are on their feet, waiting to see what is going to happen. The measurement is made, and it is 4th and 1. Many times, coach just takes a timeout, gathers his players around, gathers his assistant coaches, wondering what to do. They talk about, should we go for it? Should we not go for it? Do you think we can make it? If we're going for it, what play? And it turns out that making the decision for coaches about whether to go for it on 4th and 1 is more than just some gut instinct or the emotion of the moment. In fact, it seems that a lot of kind of math and statistics nerds and geeks have worked up some algorithms and done some studies and published some papers, made some charts, and all of it done to determine what is the probability of making first down when it is 4th down. The New York Times actually has created a bot. The New York Times bot, you can go to the bottom of the description, and we will put a link to the NC bot. And what the New York Times bot does is that it predicts the probability of making it on 4th down. So every game that we played in the NFL is put through this computer program, and the bot tells us whether or not they should have gone for it, whether they should have punted, whether they should have kicked a field goal. Every time, as you can see, if it is 4th and 1, they say go for it. There are other charts like this that coaches have, which tells them whether they should punt or whether they should go for it. Every major team from college to the NFL and probably even high school has one of these charts, or at least has an idea of what to do when it is 4th down and 1, when they gather to the sidelines and when they're talking about what to do. But invariably, every fan in the stadium is standing up and yelling, "Go for it, go for it. 4th and 1, you got to go for it. Put away the charts, forget your gut, it does not matter, go for it." What possibly could happen? Well, you could give it to your big quarterback, someone like Cam Newton, and he can power his way through and make a first down for us. But then there's always the possibility that the defense toughens up and stops the offense short. But there's also these coaches that don't ever really think about it much. They don't overanalyze it. They don't go to the charts. If they could put points on the board, they put points on the board. They will play a field position game. And what their belief is that when the game's on the line, playing to win beats playing not to lose every time. If you can put 3 points on the board, do that instead of having the possibility of not making a first down. Today we'll be talking about a passage from Genesis 32. It's a classic story, a story that most of us who have grown up in church know a little bit about. A story of Jacob wrestling with God on the Jabbok River. And it really got almost, you can picture Jacob there on the river and needing the old NFL narration, "On the frozen tundra of the Jabbok River." Well, I guess it wouldn't be frozen because it's in the middle of the desert, but all alone there is one man. Insurmountable odds, life and death. The game is on the line. You can just see the camera panning out. And the interesting thing is when you look at Jacob's life up to this point, he is one who was prone to punt it. He was one who was the master of the trick play, the end around, the trickeration was Jacob's favorite thing to do. He was a twin. His older brother's name was Esau. Esau was born with Jacob grabbing onto his leg, trying to pull him back in, because Jacob wanted the birthright. In that day and time, the firstborn male would receive everything when the parents died. So Jacob wanted to be first so that he could have everything. Then he runs a trick play on Esau when Esau comes in from the fields hungry, wanting something to eat, starving to death, literally. And Jacob says, "I'll give it to you for a bowl of soup." And Esau says, "Sure, it's no big deal. I don't care. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten. Let me have some food. You can have the birthright. Besides, Dad ain't going to die for years. We'll clear it up later." And then he and his mother ran the reverse play on his father as he was getting old. And when Jacob went in, instead of Esau, to receive the blessing, his father felt his arm. It felt coarse and hairy like Esau's arm, but it was really Jacob with goat's hair attached to him. And this was the last straw for his brother, and he decided that it is best to punt. It is best to get out of town. So he is sent back to Haran, where his mother's family is from. And when he gets there, he sees Rachel. Rachel is the daughter of an uncle by the name of Laban. And Jacob is head over heels in love for Rachel. And he just cannot think about anything else. And all he wants to do is to marry this person, this girl. So he goes to his uncle, who is also from a family of tricksters. And his uncle says, "Oh, sure, we'll let you marry Rachel. But you know what? In order for you to marry her, you will have to work for me for 7 years. So for 7 years, Jacob works for him. The day comes, he goes to the marriage ceremony. They go through the ceremony. Everything is great. They party probably into the night. He goes into the tent. He wakes up in the morning, and he rolls over and goes, "What? Whoa, wait a minute. Hold on. That ain't Rachel. That is Leah. What's going on here? Uncle Laban, what are you doing? There is something wrong here." And he says, "Oh, Well, you see, Jacob, in our society and the way we do things around here, the older girl does not the younger girl does not get married before the older girl, so you need to marry the older daughter. Wait a minute, this wasn't part of our deal. I don't want her. I ain't never been interested in her. She ain't the good looking one. I want Rachel. She's the beauty here. And Laban says, okay, you can have my daughter's hand in marriage. You can have Rachel, but you'll have to work another 7 years. But I'll cut you some slack, and in a week you can marry her, but you'll have to work for 7 years. So for 14 years, Jacob is working for his uncle. And while he's there, he breeds some sheep that has some spots on them, breeds some cattle who have spots on them, which to that society was a sign that there was something wrong. It's time for him to leave after 14 years. He says, Uncle Laban, I want to go, but hey, help me out. Can't you help a brother out? Get me some sheep and stuff. And, I don't want to take the best of the best, but here's what I do. I'll take all the spotted ones, and you can keep the rest. I'll take all the blemished ones, okay? It sounds good. We'll go for it. He rounds up, and he takes the majority of the herd with him. He has tricked Laban, and Laban is mad. And we had that passage in the scripture that's called the Mizpah. You may have seen it on little necklaces or different charms, and it says, may the Lord bless you and keep you until we meet again. Something to that effect. And it seems like such a nice little blessing kind of thing, but in actuality, what it is Uncle Laban saying, you get out of here and you run. And I pray that God takes care of you. He keeps you healthy. He keeps you alive, because I want the privilege and the honor of killing you. The next time I see you, I will kill you. So Jacob runs. And where does he go? It's 4th and 1, and he doesn't know what to do. If he can't go back to where he came from because Laban's going to kill him, he can't go back home because Esau is going to kill him. He is stuck between a rock and a hard place. And during the night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 servant wives, and his 11 sons, and crossed the Jabbok River with them. After taking them to the other side, he sent over all his possessions. This left Jacob all alone in the camp, and a man came and wrestled with him until the dawn began to break. When the man saw that he would not win the match, he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it out of its socket. Then the man said, let me go, for the dawn is breaking. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. What is your name? The man asked. He replied, Jacob. Your name will no longer be Jacob, the man told him. From now on you will be called Israel, because you have fought with God and with men and have won. Please tell me your name, Jacob said. Why do you want to know my name? The man replied. Then he blessed Jacob there. Jacob named the place Peniel, which means face of God. For he said, I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared. The sun was rising on Jacob as he left Peniel, and he was limping because of the injury to his hip. It's 4th and 1, and Jacob has a decision what to do. He sends his family across to protect them, and he goes back, and he's all alone when suddenly this man, God in human form, shows up and begins to wrestle with Jacob. All night long they wrestle. Arm bar for arm bar, takedown for takedown, punch for punch, flying leg sweep for every flying leg sweep, every backhand jab for every backhand jab. They go round and round, which is unusual because normally Jacob would have run. Jacob would have gotten out of there, but this time he decides to go for it. And they wrestled all night until the dawn is about to break. And God says, I need to go. Because he knew that if someone looked into the face of God, they would surely be died. An unholy person cannot look unto a holy God and live. And he is protecting Jacob's face, a life. Because Jacob cannot look on the face of God and live. All through the night, we're in the dark desert. He could not see who he was wrestling. So God is trying to protect Jacob. And Jacob says, hey, listen, I'm not going to let you go till you bless me. I'll take the chance, is what Jacob is saying, that I will die when the sunbreak comes up and I look into the face of God. But I will face that. I will take those odds just so I can get a blessing. It would have been easy for Jacob just to run, not to wrestle with God. It would have been easy for Jacob to go with his tendencies and not to ask for a blessing, but to say, oh, yes, get out of here, go away. But really what Jacob decides to do is that he decides to go for it. Jacob was looking for a fresh set of downs. He was looking for a blessing that would result in a fresh set of downs, for a new start, for renewed confidence. Despite all the bad things that had happened and that he had done, Jacob knows that if I can just make it that one last yard, if I can just get a fresh set of downs, then I know that meeting my brother won't mean that he's going to kill me, but we can be reconciled. I can start life again. I can begin to be forgiven. It doesn't mean that because he was forgiven that everything he'd ever done was wiped away, but it does mean that he is able to move forward, to get that fresh set of downs, to do life again. And in Genesis 33:10, when Esau meets Jacob, there is love there instead of hatred. And Esau says to Jacob, to see your face is like seeing the face of God. So today, maybe you're in that situation. It's 4th and 1. You're between a rock and a hard place. You've got a decision to make. You don't know what to do. And how does this text talk to you? How does it resonate with you? Jacob was willing to wrestle with God, to struggle, to take a risk, to work through that wrestling match, to work through the adversarial role that God had taken. But he knows that by wrestling with God, by working through that situation, that he found God's glory on the other side. And the same is true for you and I. Don't be afraid to wrestle with God. You have those tough things in your life. You don't know what to do. Use your faith to wrestle with God, to go back and forth with him, to be in that kind of relationship of give and take. This is probably what Paul meant when he told the Philippian church in Philippians 2:12 to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Struggle with God, walk with God, and experience God's grace. And remember that great grace gift, that God's gift of grace, it's free, but it doesn't come cheap. For Jacob, he limped the rest of his life. His hip hurt when it was about to rain, probably. But it served as a reminder that he had wrestled with God and he had received God's victory. And the more that we risk in following God through difficult times in our life, the more that we struggle with God, the more that we can see the promises of God at work. When we might come away limping, but we also know that we'll come away in victory. So are you a 4th and 1 person? Are you a person who's willing to wrestle with God instead of running from God? Are you willing to accept those personal challenges in life, or do you just want to run? And as you think about our church here at First Baptist Church Mebane, as you think about your life as a Christ follower, what issues could our church decide to take a risk and take on? What are the issues of poverty or injustice? What are those issues of inequality in our world that we can take on and risk? It's 4th down and 1. What do we do? Are we willing to go for it, to try to get the fresh set of downs? Or are we willing just to walk away, to take the safe route? What we find is when we risk wrestling with God, there might be injury And it might be hard and it will be difficult, but on the other end, we have victory. And victory is yours and mine when we decide to wrestle with God.